In this video, we're going to address Skill 6, Proportional Reasoning. Proportional reasoning is an important skill. In this skill, you'll use unit rates and proportions to analyze and interpret data. So first, we're going to explore a little bit more what proportional reasoning is. Proportional reasoning is super important because it gives us the ability to compare terms. For example, if we look 20 miles per hour, we know is the same as going 10 miles in 30 minutes. We can also use proportional reasoning in problems like this. If one person weighs 100 pounds, how much do 10 people weigh? Well, to figure this out, I would do 100 times 10 because I know that each person weighs 100 pounds and I have 10 people. And I would get 1,000 pounds is how much 10 people weigh. You've also seen proportional reasoning in math. I'm sure you've seen a problem like this, where it's asking us to solve for x. And so we're going to do some proportional reasoning. I see that my 6 and my x correspond, and that I know my 15 and my 8. So I am going to say that 8 over 15 is going to be equal to x over 6. And then I can cross multiply in order to figure out what x would be. So I'm going to have 15x equals 48. Next, I need to solve for x. And so I'm going to divide each of these sides by 15 in order to solve for x. And I will get that x equals, and when I do 48 divided by 15 on my calculator, I get 3.2. So I know that this side is 3.2 long. This is an example of proportional reasoning that you definitely saw in math. So now let's talk about proportional reasoning when it comes to graphs. This graph shows the number of births per 1,000 teenage girls over the past years. This says in 2009, the teenage population in the United States was 15 million people. In 2009, the number of births to teenage mothers was about how many? So I need to look at 2009, and I see that there were 39.1 people who were pregnant as teenagers per 1,000 individuals. And I know that has to equal 15 million. And you need to make sure that you write the number 15 million all the way out. You don't just get to write 15. And I'm going to put x up here. And just like we did in the previous problem, I am going to cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I'm going to get 15 million times 39.1. When I do that on my calculator, I get a huge number. I get 586,500,000. So I'm going to write that down. 586,500,000. And I know that equals 1,000x. So now I'm going to divide each side by 1,000 in order to get my total number. And my total number is 586,500 individuals. So that means that out of the 15 million people or teenagers in the United States, 586,500 were teenage mothers in 2009. Let's look at another example here. This is a graph of the Columbus Property Crime Index, which compares the amount of property crime that exists in Columbus, which is the green bar, Ohio, which is the blue bar, or the national, which is the United States, which is the orange bar. And this question says, in 2001, the population of Columbus was about 500,000 people. In 2001, the actual number of property crimes in Columbus was about what? So first, I need to look at 2001. Here is 2001, and I need to look specifically at Columbus. And I would say that that looks like it's about 9,000. So I know that 9,000 people per 100,000 people, there were 9,000 crimes per 100,000 people in Columbus in 2001. and I want to know the actual number of crimes. My actual number of crimes goes up top, and I know that there were actually 500,000 people. Just like I've done before, I'm going to cross multiply, and I'm going to get 100,000x equals, and in my calculator, I'm going to do 9,000 times 500,000. And when I do that, I get 4.5 billion. So I'm going to write that out. And it's a huge number. And it looks like this. Now I'm going to divide each side by 100,000 in order to figure out what the actual number is. So I'm going to get x equals 45,000. So I know that in 2001, when the population in Columbus was 500,000 people, the actual number of crimes about property that took place in 2001 was 45,000 crimes. This graph shows the acceptance rate for students, and it says in-state freshmen, so we're going to pretend that Thomas Worthington, for this example, is in California. So this shows us the acceptance rate for freshmen at these different schools in California. So 43 students from Thomas Worthington applied to UC Davis. Based on these admissions rates, how many students would you expect to be accepted? And we're going to say in the year 2018. So here in the year 2018, 34% of students who attended or who applied to UC Davis were accepted. So to figure out the number of students who we would expect to be accepted out of 43, I would do 43 times that percent. Remember, when we multiply by percents, we make them decimals. So it would be 43 times 0.34, and that would get me 14.62. Well, we're talking about people, so we know we cannot have half a person. So we need to round down. So our answer would be 14 students. That's how many students we would expect to be accepted to UC Davis if 34% of those students were accepted out of 43 total applicants. Last but not least, we're going to look at this information. This information shows us the percentage of men and women who have never married by age. And we're interested in this information in 2003. So we're only interested in this information here. And it says if 12 million people live in Ohio, how many women were not married by the age of 30? So how many women were not married by the age of 30? So for this one, we have to pay some really close attention. We need to see that these were the people that are not married by 30, right? And we need to figure out how many women. So this red is the women, and this is the number of people. So we know that people not married between 30 and 34 was 22.7, and between 35 and 44 was 13.2. So the first thing I need to do, because I want to know the people who are not married by 30, is I need to add these together. So I'm going to do 22.7% plus 13.2%. And on my calculator, when I do that, I am going to get 35.9%. So 35.9% of people were not married after the age of 30. So now I need to figure out how many people total that would be in Ohio. Well, I know that there's 12 million people in Ohio. And I need to calculate how many women. So remember, I'm going to put this in percentage, which is 0.359. And on my calculator, I need to do 12 million times 0.359. And I will get 4,308,000. So in 2003, 4.3 million women were not married by the age of 30. Hopefully in this video, you were able to understand proportional reasoning a little bit better, and you were able to understand how we can use proportions to analyze and interpret data.